of the health, and had he pulled back to some shield badge or something, that would have been so cool. But he stepped forward and boom, AoE damage said, no, that cute move you did, it's erased in 2 seconds.
Absolutely. These small things really pile up. Let's not forget the 4 High Templars, but waste storms onto roaches, then have to turn into Archons. It's like, I mean, the Archon's a good unit. It's not what you want in this situation.
No. You want those 4 Templar to get up to 2 storms each, and you're never wanting to storm roaches. And if you are, you want them to be getting hit by Immortals and Archons as well to finish them off.
Everything going wrong there.
Well, hey, Serral looking pretty good today. We talk a lot of hype about this guy, but he's so far delivering. And needing your support to hopefully make this a series. In the top right-hand side, one of the most handsome gamers there ever have been. It's the Blue Protoss Zest.
Well, you know, that is one of the greatest players in the world, really the greatest Zerg right now. I think no one, well, a few people argue, but we can talk about that later. From Finland, it is Serral. Of course, a member of ENCE. But I think at this point, you know, and he's kind of showing it here today as well, just with his strength. You know, I think there's 3 Zergs that people argue are the best in the world, right? So Dark thinks that Dark is the best Zerg in the world. Some people think that Rogue is the best Zerg in the world, but most people are kind of behind the Serral is the best Zerg in the world hype train. And you can kind of see why, where we're just standing here watching. We're like, well, guys, this is how theoretically you do it. And he can do what you're supposed to theoretically do. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's interesting. They each have their own style. I think Rogue obviously comes the closest to a Serral-like style, but it almost, in my opinion, this is going to sound weird, but it almost lacks confidence. It's kind of like he, in some games, is not sure that he wants to be that decisive. And I think back to him versus Maru again, where there's a couple of games where he really could have sealed the deal, but just didn't quite get there. And then Dark is a hard pick because he's so talented, so amazing, but he takes bigger risks. So he'll be the better player that can lose to a worse player, which makes him hard in this kind of BlizzCon setting. But we're hyped up on Serral. It's been a long time. Dan and I have been attending BlizzCons. You've been commentating them since 2008. Is it 8?
10
your
years.
first one? 10 years. I've been sleeping on floors and sneaking into them since then. And they've been paying me only the last few years. But we've never had a forum. We had Idra face against Yellow at one. We had Rhett take on Nada. But those were even not full tournaments or like little series. And by Idra beat Yellow, but that was even like a retired Yellow. And then in the years most recent, in StarCraft 2, we've had some good showings, but nobody we've talked about is possibly winning, not like Serral.
Well, you just look at the way that he plays the game, right? And let's compare him to the previous most dominant Zerg, Rogue. He won a bunch of tournaments right before Maru kind of took over the crown of Korea. But like Serral's play looks better than Rogue's play did last year at BlizzCon. And you know, it's especially funny, and I saw it again in that first Zest game, right? He was going for the Archon drop. He was getting charges. He was ready to put on pressure if there was going to be a hole. He flies up. He sees the roaches. He says, I've seen this before sometimes. It doesn't work versus. I'm going to pull back and play normal. Now, this is the big difference between Serral and a lot of Zergs, I think, where like sometimes whatever Zerg Zest plays or whoever plays, sometimes they have that many roaches when his build is coming. And then he's like, okay, it won't work. But not every time. With Serral, it's like every time he has just enough that you either cancel your attack or you go in and you fail.
Right.
And that's where everyone's kind of falling apart because they're like, what do I do if he's countered everything perfectly?
I feel like you have to outplay him. And it's really fun because, it's very reminiscent of the Brood War days where some of the best players, I'm thinking of your I Love Ooze, Nada in his highlight, of course Flash is almost not even fair to talk about right now because it still looks like nobody can beat him. But in their heyday, there were some crazy builds that could take a win off of them. We've had some crazy series where the upset did happen, but for the most part, 97% of the time, to beat them, you had to outplay them. That's why they became Bonjuas, or these consistent players that just kept winning. And in StarCraft 2, we haven't really had that. We've had streaks of players being very consistent, but Serral has done it beginning to end this year. And then we're like, okay, but when he faces Koreans, GSL versus the world, he still did it there. But BlizzCon's the final statement. If Serral trips up here and loses, I think we'll always have that question of, is it possible? But if he does it, that's a full year of consistent winning against everybody.
Like everything.
Except for only a couple players. It'd be amazing.
Well, look, I kind of like what Zest is up to right here, right?
Phoenix?
He's just made some Phoenixes off one Stargate. He's not overcommitting to these, right? We've seen a lot of 2 Stargate, but he actually kind of reinvented it, reintroduced it. But he's made 3 gates right up the front as well. He's going into Forge Twilight. I kind of like this. He's mixing it up. This is not something that Serral plays against a whole lot.
It's interesting. It's something nobody plays against right now. It's certainly out of the meta. But my only problem with this is it got scouted very early on. We were busy just loving on these players, but 2 Lings got in and scouted the natural and scouted the Stargate. So yes, you're going to get some Overlords here. In fact, you can't stop them from getting drones as well for the most part. That's something that Rotterdam talks a lot about, as he's an avid Phoenix user. But I fear for the transition. It's hard to take a third in the situation. A lot of players have a Void Ray or Oracle out to try and secure that. There is no third. So it's going to be a delayed third at best, if not a timing attack off of this. And if Serral can get all that intel and say, you're not taking a third, the game becomes very simple. It's only a timing attack.
You know what? Like, he has actually done a ton of damage with this so far. He's got 6 drones. Look at it. Yeah, Queen, some Overlords. This is all looking pretty good. Yeah. And look, there's some Adepts out. It looks like he's going to be able to take his third pretty easily, but going into charge and +1, you know, when you see a bunch of Phoenixes, you don't want to overmake Roaches, right? But Roaches are exactly what you need against things like lots of charge lots. So I'm kind of excited about this build coming out of Zest.
It's got some legs.
It's still looking good. Today. Yeah.
Well, everything Zest does is looking good at some level, right? But the Ling scouted this third base. Now the question, of course, becomes: is that a real third base, or is there something more nefarious being developed behind that? Phoenix are going to show up. There's a lot of Queens. They're not going to be able to get a whole lot of damage there. In fact, Phoenix does get shot down. And he is seeing one thing that's important here as well. He's not seeing 4 or 5 Phoenix becoming 6, 7, or 8. He's seeing just the 4 or 5. So he can mostly tell himself that this phase of the game is done. And he doesn't have to worry about that. So it is an off-kilter opening from Zest, but the follow-up becomes very standard. Do you still like it, Artosis?
Yes, I'm still kind of a fan of what I'm seeing here, to be honest, right? Like, this is the best opening we've seen so far. Look at the worker count right now. 54 for Zest, 50 for Serral.
The army supply count. 10 Roaches become 14.
Yes, that's true.
Let me ask you a question.
That's true,
here.
But
do you still like this?
I still like this. I'm going with yes.
You still like it, Dan.
This part I don't like. But
keep your eyes open, Dan.
I like this part for Serral. It's a good attack.
Yeah, and there's more coming behind this. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. You were hoping for a close series. You're not going to get it. The Queens are waltzing across here. Zealots behind their own force field. Serral is about to make a mockery of 2 of the best Protosses on planet Earth. He beat SOS in convincing fashion earlier, and now Zest looks darn good with his shirt off, but in this game, he might as well keep all his clothes on because it's not looking so hot. He's about to be
these Roaches
down.
caught him with his pants down, as they say.
Still a good scenario for Zest, though.
My God. It's just, he was doing so good with the opener, right? Yeah. He was doing some great harassment, but Serral's just like, nah, man, I make the Roaches, I send the Queens across.
That's it, man.
It's a good strategy.
Dead. Mortal is going to pop
Your
out.
Mortals are a little bit late. My God, he's so good.
He's pretty good at this game. Serral comes in, first day of BlizzCon, 4-0. We're not going to see him until the next stage here, which is going to be played out next weekend. Serral's going to enjoy this time in sunny California, while the rest of these guys are going to sweat it out and think about their future, because Zest is going to have to fight on if he wants to get out of this group.
Well, what a weird thing it is to have Zest and SOS. Like, let's not count out your Marine all the way, but one of those two for certain won't be advancing. And they both got bashed by Serral. Zest put up definitely a better fight, a better series than SOS, but these were one-sided. This was not, we're not sitting there like, oh yeah, Zest can win. We're like, yeah, the builder, I mean, he's doing some damage with the Phoenixes, then he dies immediately. It's like, oh yeah, well, I mean, Serral knows what he's doing, it turns out.
He gives the exact right response. You're starting to talk about, you're like, Roaches are what's strong here. Yeah. I think it kind of missed your view that you didn't see how many were coming in. And it certainly missed the Zest view, I'll tell you that. Holy cow. Well, guys, we had a great time over here wrapping up that final match, but I want to hear from our experts on that broken couch right now. Break it down for us, boys.
That's right, we shall, and barely even breaking a sweat. Serral is able to advance on to the round of 8, already claiming himself $21,000, being able to get there, and what can we even say? These games just keep flying on by, Rotterdam. I'm going to start with you. That was clinical coming up from Serral once again.
Yeah, we often praise one player a lot for a solid 12 minutes in a row here on the broken couch, and then the games happen, and it's like, man, do these nerds know anything about StarCraft? They were so wrong. I think this time all of us were pretty right. Zest played good. I actually think that Zest played pretty damn well, especially in that first game, was really able to hang in there. It's just playing good is not enough to beat Serral. You need to play out of your mind, freakishly amazing goods, and somehow get the job done. I thought it was a good series, but Serral is just showing us how freaking good he is.
I think Zest in game one, like we saw well he was doing, if he had hit that mid-game timing that I was talking about, maybe he would have been able to do well, but he just kind of sat back and went into the later stages of the game, which that was a terrible idea. That's like if you fight a wrestler and you shoot for a double leg and then you go on the ground. It's like, what are you doing? Don't do that. So in this case, went to the late game and just wasn't able to do well there once there was too many lurkers.
Don't know what Todd just said.
You watch wrestling.
No, a double leg.
Why don't you show us, Todd? We've got a lot of
the camera
bring your control out.
But obviously, like, it's very astute what Todd's saying in the fact that Serral in that first game looked nigh on untouchable when you get to the late game. It was scary. We'd almost kind of dismissed the game at that point because it was every single angle being tortured almost with Zest.
It was crazy. In game one, if you looked at the mini map, it looked like Zest was in a garbage compactor. Like, he was getting more and more smushed in, right? And then eventually it was GG and a little tiny Zest cube came out. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. It was just, there was more and more room running out. And it's just like, okay, game's over. That's my analysis, guys.
All right, so I had the wrestler comparison. You had the garbage compactor.
Yeah.
Roddy needs to.
Roddy, can you?
No, I cannot possibly ever top
a
that.
clown fiesta.
That was. I can't top that.
All right, well, we can talk about it in a few moments' time again. Before we do that, let's have it over to Serral, who's advancing to the round of 8.
Thank you, guys. Congratulations, Sarah, on making to the next round. Well, let's jump into the games directly. In game 2, Zest was slightly ahead. What goes through your mind in this case?
Yeah, the Phoenixes got me by a bit of a surprise. I didn't expect him to have 5 Phoenixes at that time point, so I lost a bit too many drones. And actually, I wasn't planning to do this all in, but just because I didn't like my spot too much, and also he made Phoenixes, and the rush distance wasn't that big, so I just decided to actually pull all in that game.
But you look so comfortable at every part of the game. So is there any part where you feel less comfortable?
Not really. I mean, I'm pretty confident in all points of the game. I would say, I don't know. Yeah, no weak point. Not any specific weak point I would point out.
Like, is there any point that you really want to improve in your play, or are you perfect?
I want to improve all parts.
Okay, so and the community expects a lot from you in this tournament. Like, Serral is the best player, and do you feel pressure, or does this affect you somehow?
Not really. I never really cared too much about people's opinion. Obviously, I would say it helps me more than it actually affects me negatively. I just kind of read all the positive feedback, not really the negative. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm sure a lot of fans are cheering for you. So do you have any last words for them?
Yeah, I want to thank all my fans for the support like always. I think they're a big part and has helped me a lot to become what I have become. So thanks to all of them.
Well, thank you so much and congratulations again. And that's why it was the last match of the day. And James, back to you.
Thank you very much, Hutchison. And overall, yeah, just good to hear from Serral once again, moving on into the round of 8. And to be fair, today, he kind of made it look easy moving into that round of 8.
Yeah, I mean, he did. We're still waiting to see what the kryptonite is for the Superman. Is there actually kryptonite? Did we just write in a superhero for this year and there's no way to stop him? It's really exciting because we may actually, and it is very realistic that we may have a non-Korean win. I mean, I guess tomorrow's the big obstacle in his way. Let's also not forget that Neve's been doing really well too. But if this keeps happening, I don't know. This might change the entire landscape of StarCraft too.
Yeah,
I mean, ultimately,
going to dominate.
Can somebody throw a wrench in the garbage compactor? That's Serral.
Right. Then someone turns the garbage compactor off.
I mean, you're talking about superheroes. I feel like you need Thanos to click his finger and hope he's in the 50% that actually disappears.
I'm going to slow you guys down a bit. I'm a big Serral fan myself, but I feel like this group, he was kind of meant to win. We all said it was a very good group for him on paper. He hasn't topped Maru yet. He hasn't defeated. I mean, obviously, he beat Dark the other tournament. He is obviously the world, but
Correct.
I still think a Dark at the global finals, that's going to be one hell of a match. I personally rate Classic and Stats both a little bit tougher than the two Protoses he was able to defeat today. Don't get me wrong, absolutely fantastic start, and it's nice that our foreign hope is showing up this strong. But let's not get too carried away yet, because he didn't just 3-0 Maru or something, you know? Like, we're there, and he's taking the right steps that he was supposed to take, but so far he's doing what was expected. Let's see what the bracket phase will bring.
What do you think about looking at how Zest kind of came out of this series? Obviously, it wasn't exactly the easiest series for him. He's going to be falling down into the decider match later on that will be played on Sunday, of course. What do you think about his prospects overall in this group, considering that you've still got people like SOS in this group?
Yeah, I think he did all right. Like, I mean, Serral is just so insanely good right now that we can't look at that last series and be like, oh yeah, no, Zest is not going to do well this tournament. He'll only have one match to win, which will be either against either Hero Marine or SOS. I think that's very doable for him.
Yeah. You know, in a lot of ways, now that Serral's out of this group becomes a lot more interesting. You know, now we can really, we've the best players gotten out. So now with the remaining players that we have, it's kind of cool to really speculate there for this moment and say, okay, who actually does come out?
It's like easy to say that because we just played some matches in Group A and B, which were the groups of Maru and Serral. But right now, like, it's never happened before the global finals, but I'm just already picturing the Maru versus Serral finals, the tasteless GG at the end, and like it feels like there's gonna need to be something special that's gonna have to happen to prevent that, and that's gonna be in the likes of guys like Rogue, Dark, and all these guys to somehow bring out some crazy games.
Yeah, I mean, even there's a possibility that Serral meets someone like a Classic earlier on in the bracket down the line, and to see even that match, I think in itself would be fantastic to see how it played out at Katowice, to then moving on to today, of course.
Yep, and of course they had that rematch back then at WSG. But you're right, James. There is a lot of quarterfinals that are already going to be very tough. Now, the one good news, of course, for a lot of the StarCraft fans is that Maru versus Serral is not possible now in the quarterfinals. That's very good news because they both won their group. So there is only a 50% chance that they will meet before the finals. So that dream is still alive, but you're really doing, it's a lot of disrespect towards all these other freaking good players that we have. This is not just a bunch of good players and Maru and Serral. Like, no, you've got the very, very best. And yes, these guys are the favorite, but I will not be shocked out of my seat if Rogue, Dark, Classic, or Stats makes it to the final, or even both of those guys, because those are four of the very, very best we've ever seen as well.
I actually really like what you're saying there, because this is really important to lay out, okay? It is not just these two forces on from different parts of the world, that might come together. There's a lot of different players that could get to the finals here still.
Yeah. To go back to your question a little bit before, I think this group is still wide open. I'm really interested to see SOS against Hero Marine, seeing if Hero Marine can take some pointers from his series today. And Zest's PvP, I think, has looked really good. So if SOS would win that series, I actually see definitely a good opportunity for Zest to still make it out of this group.
All right, well, we can take a look at, obviously, the results that have come in throughout the day as a whole. A lot of 2-0s, so a lot of relatively one-sided series, with Neeb being able to take that 2-1 over TY at the beginning of the day. Was that a surprise to anyone, or was that kind of expected? I think, obviously, TY is coming in as one of the strong favorites, but Neeb beating him there was a good start.
I think it's a small surprise, like not a shocking upset, oh my god, but it's like one of those, good for you, Neeb, let's go, good to represent the WCS circuit well.
One thing about Neeb too is he's getting a really interesting place in StarCraft 2 here, right? Because I think in some level he gets overshadowed by Serral a lot, and I think Serral sort of overshadows so many things, not just in StarCraft, but in esports in general, because we're finally having history possibly shift here. But Neeb is also showing that he can beat basically anybody. We don't know if he can continue to travel all the way through a bracket and go undefeated and become a champion. He's done that before in some tournaments, sure, but it's definitely something you want to factor in. But it seems like, once again, he's reasserted himself. He can take anybody on.
Yeah.
I think perhaps the thing that made me most happy today is that even though Serral's had this insane dominant year, he recently had that loss against Neeb. And even though all of us were telling each other, like, was he really going all out? Was he really trying to show everything? Like, I was convinced that was not the best Serral that was possibly out there. But on the other end, it still kind of scared me. It's like, what if he's hitting a slump right now, like right before BlizzCon?
Right.
Because that gameplay suddenly looked like awfully one-dimensional and straightforward. And I'm like, that's not the Serral we normally know. But it's really good to see that wasn't the real Serral. Like what we saw today, it's transition into transition. It's the multitasking. It's attacks all over the place. I'm like, yeah, okay, Serral's still as good as we know he is.
Yeah, definitely. And we can take a look at also tomorrow's games that are going to be going on, because we will be shifting completely to also Group C and Group D as well. And in those two groups, we have another top 8 competitors, which will be going up against one another, opening up the day with Haas versus
Oh,
yeah.
cheering backstage.
Oh, you're right, actually, I can. And then, of course, we will have things like Dark versus Showtime, Nurture versus Classic, and Rogue going up against Special. And then the 2 matches that we are yet to determine, because, of course, those will be the winners' matches to find out who goes through to the round of 8. So in the first 2 days, we're already really getting a very good semblance and idea of what we're going to be seeing in that kind of bracket stage. And already, I think nobody's really disappointed from what we've seen today.
No, I mean, it's always good to get this event started. I mean, we've got a long road ahead of us to see what that Final Four finally it's going to look like. But yeah, we've had some great games. I think a lot of things that we expected to see, we did see, right? We did see, absolutely terrifying Serral is, that Neeb can hold his own, but, maybe he's a little bit overshadowed. Mara, of course, is terrifying. So yeah, we're beginning to get the outlines of this event.
I must say it is good though to see our favorites deliver on a day one, because I think you just mentioned this before, Johan. There's so many years in a row where we're like, oh my god, innovation this year at BlizzCon, and then like Duck shows up and we're like, well, so what's that story? You know?
Steady on, I liked my Duck.
Yeah, no, I mean I love my brother's brother too, but that wasn't ideal for the storylines.
Of course. He wasn't the favorite.
That was not the narrative we were trying to build. No. Plot twist.
Small thing before we
leave.
First
episode of Game of Thrones ever. Anyways,
of course, you've got players like Lambo as Heroes Marine as well coming in. We haven't talked about them much towards the end here, but what do you guys think about for them going into tomorrow? Any thoughts?
I think they're gonna have to be strong mentally, kind of stay in it. They got like tomorrow off to try and train and think about after tomorrow when they're gonna be playing. So they should focus on that. They're not out of it just yet. They didn't look that great today. They didn't look too bad either. So I hope they can do that.
Stuff amongst this lineup for sure, I think, in these groups.
It's particularly tough, I think, for Lambo, because it's another Terran and not a fantastic Terran. I mean, TY may not be Maru, but he's pretty damn close.
Oh, yeah.
So it's very tough, but I mean, you just got to go back to the drawing board, right? And hopefully Lambo can come up with something. He can get some extra games in. I'm sure today was a good learning moment against someone like Maru, but it's always going to be very tough for him.
It seems like everything's sort of gone, I guess, as we expected so far. So if we saw, for instance, Lambo succeed in his next match, that would be great, but that would for sure be an upset.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's time to wrap things up for day number 1, as we've had a fantastic start here to the 2018 WCS Global Finals. Join us tomorrow, same time, same place, for Group C and D, as we find out who moves on to the round of 8.